G8 and G20 meeting, the $1 billion meeting, came off to where they said, well, we need to cut back on our spending, we need to change that, and we need to look at global warming, and they had a whole list of different things. But the fact of the matter is, it came back down to we need to cut spending, cut the stimulus. Paul Krugman, whom you accurately quote as saying, don't stop the stimulus. You're saying that also during the 1930s they cut back on the spending, and that threw us into a second depression, causing World War II to come about because it took the country down again. Is President Obama right in continuing with the stimulus as opposed to what Europe is telling him to do, Mr. Chapman?
First of all, he doesn't make any decisions about anything. He only does what he's told to do. And the people who control things in America want to continue to stimulate the economy to keep it going. They evidently are not ready at this point in time to go ahead and pull the plug and have a deflationary depression, and that would put the world economically and financially in dire straits and would force people to accept world government, and this is really what these people are all about. And so I think that the idea of continuing to inflate in the United States is a wrong one. And I think raising taxes is another stupid and dreadful thing to do. On the other hand, Europe, what they're doing with austerity is good. What their problem is they've increased taxation. And if you increase taxation and the money goes to the government to decrease debt to bondholders, it in turn does, in fact, in part go into the economy. But more important is nothing goes into the hands of the people who consume, and they keep the economy going. So if you raise taxes, you have high unemployment, higher unemployment than you had before. And if you'll notice that people in the Federal Reserve are talking about endless high unemployment. And so they know exactly where they're headed with this thing. And, you know, you're not going to avoid a depression. It's impossible. Now, what they want to do by inflating is bring it down slowly and imperceptibly, if you may, to the average American, because they think he's as dumb as a rock. And that's what they're trying to do. And then somewhere down near the lower end, they'll pull the plug and say, look, we got to have world government. It's the only solution. And we got to have a new currency called the SDR. And when somebody asks, well, what's backing the SDR, they'll say, well, carbon taxes that they got to pass worldwide. And it's not going to work. It's just more subterfuge, more destruction. And, of course, if they have their war, are they going to lose half the facilities in the world? Are they going to lose half the people in the world? I mean, who knows? These people are totally out of their minds.
They absolutely are. Now, you did have kudos for one person in Congress, and I've got to say this was a major plus, somebody whom I've liked for a long time, who's having a very difficult race right now in Wisconsin. That's Russ Feingold. Senator Feingold was one of 8 votes against the Glass-Steagall repeal, and he's the one Democrat who is voting against the so-called financial reform. And I think it's very telling that he is against the financial reform because it said he'll not vote to advance the financial reform bill. He's not going to. His fellow Democrats, the 60th votes they need to clear a final hurdle. My test for the financial regulatory reform bill is whether it will prevent another crisis, Feingold said in a prepared statement. The bill fails that test, and for that reason, I'll not vote to advance it. Good for him. Finally, one senator standing up on financial issues and making a very intelligent argument about this. Otherwise, the banks are getting everything they want, aren't they?
They are. What it amounts to is a aggressive action instead of acting defensively by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is going to end up with a monopoly on things financial in the United States. They will become a tyrannical dictator, and they are owned, because they're a private corporation, by banks in New York City mostly, although there's foreign owners of the Federal Reserve as well from its very inception in 1913. And they're going to dictate endlessly to the American people, and they're going to do it through the Fed, and that is their instrument. And if the Fed had been audited, we would have found out what a bunch of criminals they are. And we're dealing with white-collar criminals. We're dealing with people whose families, in some cases, have been affiliated with this group of people for the last 1,000 years. It's nothing new. They do it over and over and over again, and they get away with it. And we've got to stop them this time. One of the ways we can do that is by kicking their paid-off employees in the House and in the Senate out of office. And then we get a chance at passing legislation to stop these people. If we don't do that, you better get your Cosmoline off your weapons.
You've got a couple of people there who are not paid off by the Federal Reserve. One apparently is Russ Feingold, and another one is Ron Paul, and I'd put Dennis Kucinich in that mix. So you've got a number of people who aren't, but the big people are, and we need to get rid of both parties. Now, one of the other things, another big story that you have in the International Forecaster is regarding the official 9/11 story. Only 16% of the people are buying it, the government story on 9/11. This has come about quicker than people have found out how phony the Kennedy assassination was, and the theory put out by Arlen One-Shot Specter on that. They have found out that 9/11 is a phony baloney story. We should be up in arms about this. This has been the excuse for the U.S. policy from then on, and excuse for taking away everything that we held dear, our freedoms under the Constitution, been this 9/11, and it's a fictional story that they're putting out from Washington. I found that heartening that only 84% of the people are rejecting the official story. Didn't you?
Yes, and I'd like to add something on another subject in here, simply because of statistics. I just heard in the radio news, which was part of our program today, that the poll was just given, and people were asked what they think about what Arizona has done in relation to illegal immigrants, and or we call them illegal aliens. And that is that 90% said Arizona was doing the right thing, and only 4% said they were not. I mean, that is very telling. If that president thinks and tries to pass legislation or uses executive orders to make these people citizens or whatever he's going to do, he better be prepared for revolution. I've never seen numbers like that before.
Revolution and or impeachment immediately. 90% of the people approving of Arizona, what do they not understand about the word illegal? They are just backing up and putting teeth in the federal law.